A phone camera tried to make me small. A piece of paper made a door. A quiet gift signed in ink, a law many ignore, and a key warm against my skin. 3 small things changed everything. African Karma Stories. I arrived at the gate in a faded work dress. The hem dusted the same color as the road, and the key on its cord rested warm against my collarbone like a small heartbeat. The palms made a soft hush above the wall, and the afternoon light settled on the tadalakt the way milk settles. I stood there for a breath longer than necessary, listening for the house the way you listen for the sea behind the door. A woman's laugh bounced like a coin on stone. A phone lifted, glassy and bright, catching my shoes first, then my sleeves, then the way I had tied my scarf. Laughter is a quick judge. It sees dust and forgets journeys. She narrated me with the careless confidence of someone who has never scrubbed the courtyard at dawn. Maid, she said, and the word rolled easy, as if a life could be folded into a title and put away on a high shelf. Come closer with me if you like. Sit at the quiet edge of my voice while the street keeps its noise. I will pour you tea in your imagination, the steam rising slowly, and tell you what clothes cannot say when everyone is talking over them. Fabrics learn to hold secrets. They keep the salt of tears, the lift of laughter, the smell of cumin from last night's soup. They remember who looked at you with kindness and who weighed you like fruit. I could have argued. I could have pointed to the key. Instead, I let the key rest where it was, and I let my breath find its old rhythm. In through the nose, out through the mouth, as my aunt taught me when the earth shook and we had to walk without hurrying. Houses decide whether to open to you. They watch your hands. They notice if you wipe your feet without being asked. Villa Aitrakma is like that. She has old courtyards and a young patience. I learned to greet her in a low voice. The phone tilted closer. The comments arrived like sparrows, quick, pecking, gone. Dirt under her nails, one said. Where did she find that dress? Asked another. I thought of all the women whose hands look like mine by nightfall, and I let the words pass over me like shade. You know this, don't you? Sometimes you cannot answer. Sometimes you can only be the answer, and wait. If you were beside me, I would say, do not be fooled by laughter that points. It does not know what it is pointing at. There are homes that open when humility knocks. There are thresholds that feel your heartbeat before they see your face. My shoes were dusty because I had walked far. My sleeves were plain because plain cloth forgives and endures. I had come to keep a promise, not to win a room. When the gate clicked, it sounded like a page turning. I touched the wood with my palm. The grain felt calm, as if it recognized the rhythm of my breath. 2 guards watched quietly. The woman with the phone waited for a scene and did not get one. Quiet is a kind of scene, too. It is where change puts down its bag. I will tell you how I came to carry this key, and why a widow chose a girl who walked softly. I will tell you what the papers say when the room grows patient. Not tonight, not at once. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day loosen. Tonight, they left. In 2 days, a notary will clear his throat, unfold the folder, and the house will choose its voice. I come from Talat Nyakub, where mountains lean against the sky and mornings begin with dough under palms and the ring of tea glasses. On the September night in 2023, when the ground moved like water, We were sitting on woven mats, arguing softly about salt. The first tremor sounded like a heavy truck. The second pressed the walls inward and turned air to dust. We ran outside with prayers between teeth and breath. By dawn, the house wore cracks, and my aunt packed bread and dates into a bag, then folded a photograph of my mother into my pocket. The road to Marrakech did not invite us. It did not refuse us. So we walked, rode, then walked again. In Marrakech, the air felt busy, spiced with exhaust and cumin, a market of voices shaped into streets. I learned the names of places by how my feet felt. The Medina pulled me into shade and narrow turns. Gulees lifted its chin and blinked glass. For a week, I slept on a cousin's mat near Bab Dukala and listened to the city breathe. Work found me, as work often does when you are polite to doorways. A neighbor of a neighbor said a widow in the Palmeraie needed a steady presence, not a nurse, but someone who respects small rhythms. Her name was Lala Najat. Silver hair, sleeves neat, a way of placing each word like a gardener sets young plants. Steady fingers, enough space. She did not tell stories loudly. She asked questions and let silence deliver its answers. Light fell across the veranda as she taught me to sip tea slowly enough to feel mint begin as cool and end as sweet. She opened folders and traced lines with her finger, teaching me to read hours, rest days, and wages. A signature is a promise, and a promise needs paper as roof. Say your name clearly, Amina, and never apologize for its sound. Before her, I kept myself small out of habit. Walking softly kept me safe. Speaking last meant trouble passed me by. She noticed and gently patted the chair beside her. Sit, not at the edge. She had me sign my own contract, simple as bread, with hours, rest days, and a wage that did not wobble. On Fridays, she insisted I go out and see the world, even if the world was only a new bakery 2 streets away. She gave me a small notebook and said, "Write your name slowly until you like how it looks." I did faithfully. Between errands, I met Yassine, a mosaic restorer with cedar dust on his sleeves and careful hands that paused before touching anything old. He studied a crack by the courtyard fountain, kneeling as if greeting a shy child. He measured twice, then 3 times, whispering numbers like small prayers. I liked that about him, the way care slows a person down. We traded greetings that felt like lamps left lit for whoever returns late. Once he left an extra piece of tile near the door and said, "For luck." I kept it in my pocket and felt my face warm. Those weeks I learned to be visible without making noise. The city taught me its corners. Lala Najat taught me where to stand inside my own life. At night, I smoothed the folded photograph and told my mother I was working in a house that liked quiet feet and lemon trees. Some evenings the wind carried orange blossom through the shutters, and I imagined the mountains hearing me breathe. In the stillness, I practiced saying my name aloud, not louder, steadier. After noon, Lala Najat pressed a sealed letter into my palm. "When men get loud," she said, "let paper talk." Before the storm of voices, Villa Ait Rama smelled of verbena and books. The Tadelect walls kept the heat at arm's length, cool as river stones. In the courtyard, the fountain counted time, a steady syllable of water. Morning light found the terrace. By dusk, the tiles held a memory of sun, warm under bare feet. When the muezzin called from the neighborhood mosque, his voice stitched patience into the day, gathering our tasks into calm. I will take your hand and lead you through the rooms as I learn them. First, the library, where sunlight tempered itself through wooden lattice and the air carried the good dust of pages. A cedar chest kept letters tied with faded ribbon. On one shelf lay a book of recipes like a prayer. Slow onions, saffron like a tiny sun, time measured in breaths. The window opened to lemon trees that sieved the wind into friendly shapes. The kitchen was the heart that never bragged. Here Lala Najat taught me to wash rice until the water ran clear, and to listen for quiet changes that mean something is done. She also taught me the gentle laws of our country. Law 1912, she said, protects people like us who work in homes. A written contract, fair hours, weekly rest, a minimum age. Not charity, Amina, the plain dignity of rules. Paper is a roof when weather comes sudden. She opened another folder and spoke of Article 48 of the Family Code, how marriage is a partnership, and how the work two people do, bread baked, floor swept, can be recognized when property is divided. Fairness, she said, is not dessert for the loud. Then she gave me a new word, hiba, a gift given while one is alive, witnessed, recorded, registered, so that later grief does not scatter a house into quarreling hands. We sat at the wooden table with tea and bread, and she guided my finger along the lines. The notary's name, the registry seal, the title number like a street address for a home's legal soul. Houses, she said, should belong to the ones who keep them kind. Ownership is not a crown, Amina. It is a chore carried daily, a light carried. I nodded the way you nod when truth arrives like a neighbor inside the gate. Sometimes between lessons, Yasin worked by the fountain. He arrived with quiet tools and a small radio that murmured old songs, never loud enough to compete with birds. He'd kneel, brush grit from a crack, and study the break until the stone told him what it needed. Measure twice, cut once, he'd smile, and the tile would meet its partner like two old friends. I watched his patience and thought how people who respect materials often respect hearts too. Afternoons, the veranda filled with the smell of verbena and orange peel warming on the railing. I wiped the tables, watered the dazel, and listened to the house breathe through shutters that clicked softly when the wind changed. Some rooms we left quiet, not from neglect, but from reverence. The sewing room with its basket of buttons, the guest room where travelers had left a postcard, a scarf, a laugh folded into the quilt. A place grows polite when you listen to it. On her last clear morning, the air was thin and bright. Lala Najat placed the villa key in my palm and then lifted the cord over my head so it lay against my chest. "Wear it," she said, "as you would a prayer you do not want to misplace." We walked to the courtyard and stood by the fountain while the muezzin's call softened into pigeons' wings. When the key knocked against my sternum, I knew it was less metal than promise, and I stood a little straighter. I took the bus to Gueli's in a soft morning that smelled of bread and engine oil, the kind of day that keeps its voice low. The notary's building waited on a quiet street where jacaranda blossoms fell like small letters. Inside, the tiles were cool and the receptionist's hello settled like a folded napkin. I carried a folder that felt heavier than paper and lighter than fear.
Matri Rashid greeted us without hurry. His office smelled faintly of cedar and stamp ink. He offered water first, then silence, and in that quiet, my heartbeat chose to walk instead of run. On one side sat Yusef in a pressed shirt and borrowed certainty. Beside him, Selma arranged her smile like a blade. Muna hovered by the window, phone angled toward my shoes, commentary rising in her throat. Names were taken, identities checked, the small rituals that keep big feelings from spilling. When he asked for the file, I set down Lala Najat's sealed letter, its wax pomegranate red. He broke the seal as if lifting a simmering lid. He read that months before her passing, she executed a hiba, a living gift, transferring ownership of Villa Ait Rachma to me, Amina El Mansouri, without condition, duly notarized and registered. He lifted another folder, pale blue, and slid out the extract from the conservation foncier. Title number spoke to parcel, parcel to map. The stamp shone modestly under the light. He matched signatures, compared dates, named the two witnesses, Lala Fati and Hamid, and recorded that the keys and inventory had passed to me while Najat still breathed and chose. The words did not raise their voices. They did not need to. They were bricks, and the house they formed did not wobble. Yusuf leaned forward with a hard smile and asked about family rights, grief, and what was proper. Matri Rashid answered with patient clarity. A hiba, executed and registered, is not a rumor. It is a door already opened. Death does not close it. Selma asked if a maid could truly understand such papers. The notary turned to me, and I spoke my name, address, work, and my wish to keep the staff and the house upright. It was enough. Muna cleared her throat, asking if the public might hear another version. Her phone hovered like a wasp. Matri Rashid gently asked her to put it away. This office, he said, shelters dignity. The law prefers to be read, not performed. She lowered the device and the room cooled. I thanked her for coming because courtesy can be a rope across a river. I thanked everyone, even those who did not wish me well, because the house had taught me that gratitude keeps rooms from cracking. When the meeting ended, the secretary stacked the folders with the same care I use for clean sheets. Outside, Guilise wore its late morning brightness. The city sounded like tea boiling just before it sings. On the steps, I found Yassine waiting with a canvas bag and a shy smile. He reached for my handbag where the strap had worked itself loose and retied it with a knot that said, "I will not replace you, only support you." His eyes refused to gloat. They offered steadiness instead, a quiet stronger than applause. We walked to the corner and shared orange juice, pulpy and bright. He asked if everything was settled. I told him paper had built a door, and I would spend the afternoon learning to live on the other side. He nodded, measuring a new threshold. The city kept moving, unaware of our small victory. Triumph is loud. Belonging is soft. I held the folder against my ribs and listened to my breath slow. Paper had built a door. Now the house would ask what kind of home I would build behind it. It asked for patience first.
Dawn pressed its soft cheek against the palm grove, and the gate met my key with a sigh that sounded like welcome. I carried a basket of warm cobes, the crust crackling faintly, and the steam smelled of yeast and orange blossom. The courtyard wore its pale light like a shawl. I laid bread on a low table for the staff, poured olive oil into small saucers, and watched faces soften as hunger stepped aside. Before words, we share bread. It teaches the tongue to be kind. I gathered everyone beneath the fig tree, Lala Fati with her firm, mothering eyes, Hamid, patient as the gate he guards, the gardeners with soil under their nails. I set a neat stack of papers on the table and smoothed the first page with my palm. Simple contracts, I said. Clear hours, weekly rest, fair wages, paid on time. We read them together line by line, and I answered questions without hurry. A contract is like a sheet. When you smooth it, sleep comes easier. Selma arrived with her clipboard and her quick voice, slicing the morning into orders. She spoke over me. I let her finish, then thanked her for her service. I handed her a written release, 2 week severance, and an acknowledgement for her signature. No quarrel, no spectacle, only the end of a habit that made smaller mouths close. She signed with a stiff hand, and I escorted her to the gate. Mercy is not weakness. It is choosing to end noise before it bruises. By afternoon, the sun drew soft squares on the guest wing floor. Saneh from the Amal Center came with the folder and the practical smile of someone who knows how to start things. We walked the hallway, imagining bunk beds with clean blankets, lockers that click gently, a study table under the window. Training in the mornings, paid practice in the afternoons, hot supper in the courtyard. Dignity arranged like a timetable. We spoke about stipends, childcare, bus routes, and the way a woman's shoulders drop when she knows the next month will not argue with her. We stood at the threshold and saw the room fill with names we did not yet know. Evening cooled the tiles. Yassine stayed to regrout a threshold where many feet had asked too much of the seam. He worked with a lamplight patience, mixing powder and water until the color matched what the house remembered. I brewed atay and slid a plate of massemen between us, the layer still hissing with butter. We ate with our fingers, laughing softly at nothing urgent. Do you ever notice how routine is the gentlest kind of love? He wiped his hands, then pressed the heel of his palm against the new grout, the way a mason blesses a stone. There, he whispered, Safi. He asked if the day had been heavy. I told him it had been careful, and that careful days are lighter by night. He nodded, as if measuring another doorway I could not see. The villa seemed to listen. Somewhere a dove rearranged its feathers and the fountain counted its patient syllables. Before I locked the office cabinet, I touched the neat stack of signed papers, and I felt the house breathe out. Promises had been made in writing and in bread. Houses remember the first promises you make to them. By sunset, mine was ready to test mine. I turned the key once more and heard the gate answer. Night gathered like ink at the edges, but inside the courtyard, a small light stayed on, a promise to anyone who arrives tired, home. We began the slow work of choosing what a house keeps and what it releases. I opened drawers like old letters, breathing the faint perfume of verbena and starch. Lala Najat's amber prayer bead stayed, warm as tea in my palm. Her wool shawl stayed because it remembers shoulders. The moth-eaten curtains went, carrying their tired dust into the sunlight. I folded the good linens into neat towers and let the torn ones become rags for future spills, because mercy can be practical. A tall bookshelf in the corridor became a small library. On the top shelf, I set recipes written in the soft hand of neighbors. Urfisa for recovery, harira for patience, masemen for slow mornings. Beneath them, I placed simple booklets about rights, written clearly: contracts, rest days, wages that do not wobble. On the last shelf, I lined blank folders for resumes, each with a paperclip and hope. I labeled everything in careful script, speaking the words as I wrote them so the house could learn their names.
By afternoon, the rooms felt lighter. A cracked porcelain bowl went to the garden to hold rain for birds. The sewing room woke up when I oiled the pedal and threaded the machine. I kept her thimble in a small dish and her pin cushion by the window because useful things prefer sunlight. Memory did not mean museum. It meant a path through the rooms you can walk without tripping. At night, Gemma Elfana hummed like a patient heart, its drums and flutes softened by distance. I sat by the fountain with my feet in cool shadow and spoke to you, quietly, about the fear that curls behind my ribs. Power can make a fist before it unclenches. I do not want to grow hard in the name of being strong. I want strength that bends without breaking, the kind that picks up broken glass and still remembers how to touch a cheek. The service gate clicked softly, and Muna stepped in like someone entering a library. No phone, no makeup, eyes rimmed with salt. She said she was sorry, voice thin as paper, and held out both hands as if handing me the words. I guided her to the kitchen and poured tea, saucers under cups, because some lessons arrive better with sugar and steam. We did not bargain shame for favor. We let silence hold our sentences until they cooled. When she reached for her phone, I only shook my head. Not tonight. She nodded, relief and grief sharing the same breath. Before she left, I asked her to remember that apology is a beginning, not a badge. The villa began to gather names like threads. Aziza came from Azim's miss with a laugh that survived rubble. She kneaded dough as if teaching it to breathe, and the oven listened. Khadija arrived from Tahanat with a careful stitch, hems straightened under her fingers and torn pockets learned to carry again. In the afternoon heat, we studied English under the ceiling fan's whisper. My name is, I come from, I can do. We repeated slowly, tasting the confidence on our tongues. Evening brought the smell of orange peel warming on the railing. I wrote the day's small victories in my notebook, curtains gone, beads capped, 2 new names on the library card. Mercy, I am learning, is not a soft word. It is a hinge that lets a door swing quietly and stay true. I slept lightly, listening for the house breathing, and found my breath matching softly. Mercy is a door that swings both ways. The next morning, someone tries to slam it.
We began the slow work of choosing what a house keeps and what it releases. I opened drawers like old letters, breathing the faint perfume of verbena and starch. Lala Najat's amber prayer beads stayed, warm as key in my palm. Her wool shawl stayed because it remembers shoulders. The moth-eaten curtains went, carrying their tired dust into the sunlight. I folded the good linens into neat towers and let the torn ones become rags for future spills, because mercy can be practical. A tall bookshelf in the corridor became a small library. On the top shelf, I set recipes written in the soft hand of neighbors, Rifsa for recovery, Harira for patience, Msemen for slow mornings. Beneath them I placed simple booklets about rights, written clearly, contracts, rest days, wages that do not wobble. On the last shelf I lined blank folders for resumes, each with a paper clip and hope. I labeled everything in careful script, speaking the words as I wrote them, so the house could learn their names. By afternoon, the rooms felt lighter. A cracked porcelain bowl went to the garden to hold rain for birds. The sewing room woke up when I oiled the pedal and threaded the machine. I kept her thimble in a small dish and her pincushion by the window, because useful things prefer sunlight. Memory did not mean museum. It meant a path through the rooms you can walk without tripping. At night, Gemma El Fana hummed like a patient heart,
its drums and flutes softened by distance. I sat by the fountain with my feet in cool shadow and spoke to you, quietly, about the fear that curls behind my ribs. Power can make a fist before it unclenches. I do not want to grow hard in the name of being strong. I want strength that bends without breaking, the kind that picks up broken glass and still remembers how to touch a cheek. The service gate clicked softly, and Muna stepped in like someone entering a library. No phone, no makeup, eyes rimmed with salt. She said she was sorry, voice thin as paper, and held out both hands as if handing me the words. I guided her to the kitchen and poured tea, saucers under cups, because some lessons arrive better with sugar and steam. We did not bargain shame for favor. We let silence hold our sentences until they cooled. When she reached for her phone, I only shook my head. Not tonight. She nodded, relief and grief sharing the same breath. Before she left, I asked her to remember that apology is a beginning, not a badge. The villa began to gather names like threads. Aziza came from Amisnes with a laugh that survived rubble. She kneaded dough as if teaching it to breathe, and the oven listened. Khadija arrived from Tahano with a careful stitch. Hems straightened under her fingers, and torn pockets learned to carry again. In the afternoon heat, we studied English under the ceiling fan's whisker. My name is, I come from, I can do. We repeated slowly, tasting the confidence on our tongues. Evening brought the smell of orange peel warming on the railing. I wrote the day's small victories in my notebook. Curtains gone, beads kept, 2 new names on the library card. Mercy, I am learning, is not a soft word. It is a hinge that lets a door swing quietly and stay true. I slept lightly, listening for the house breathing, and found my breath matching softly. Mercy is a door that swings both ways. The next morning, someone tries to slam it. On the 40th day after the notary, we gathered before sunrise, when the palms held night and the air tasted of dew. In the training room, we drew a circle with saffron milk, the color of light. Women who had survived storms stood shoulder to shoulder, each with a name and a breath. We passed dates and milk, and the room learned our intentions the way bread learns heat. In the courtyard beneath the lemon trees, Lala Fati opened the envelope with Lala Najat's letter. She read it in Darija first, then in French, her voice carrying like a bird that knows its way home. It spoke of work as prayer, of houses as promises, of choosing kindness as a form of law. When it ended, a hush felt like shade, and we exhaled together. Come sit with me a moment, listener. Let's talk softly about clothes. They can trick strangers into arrogance, and they can protect your dignity like a thin shield. I have learned to love simple fabric because it forgives and because it listens when I cannot be loud. The soft crown I wear lives under my ribs, a key on a cord, warm against skin, a name I say without flinching, a spine that stands without shouting. Power, I have discovered, is best expressed in contracts honored quietly and on time. There is a way to speak without shouting. You sign, you pay, you rest, you repeat. The women stepped over the saffron circle and touched the doorframe as they entered, making a pact with wood and future. We placed new notebooks on the table and wrote first lines. My name is, I come from, I can do. A room blooms when a person hears herself state her gifts. Muna arrived with shy eyes and a folder of figures. She asked to offer her platform for scholarships, not a spectacle, but as a steady water each month. We talked about privacy, about telling stories with permission or not at all. She promised to keep the camera toward the need and away from faces still stitching themselves back together. When she left, she carried a list of costs and a simpler list of boundaries. Toward evening, Yusuf came by service gate, thinner at the eyes, a paper bag in his hands. No cameras, no lawyer. He set it on the table, a donation from a car he sold, and said he wished it used for mattresses. He did not ask for his name anywhere. It was the first true thing I have seen him do. I thanked him. His shoulders lowered on the way out, as if something had set him gently. Night folded itself over the courtyard and the fountain kept its patient syllables. Yasin finished measuring the last alcove and left his tape measure on the kitchen table beside my stack of papers. I tucked it next to the tea tin so he would find it in the morning. There is room here for his tools and my contracts, for bread proofing under cloth and law written in clear ink, for music in the corner and a list of bus routes on the wall. Room, at last, for love that does not erase our work. Later, I locked the gate and pressed my palm to the wood. I whispered a prayer for homes everywhere. May laughter be gentle. May paper be honest. May the smallest keys find the right doors. The palms answered with a soft hush that sounded like agreement. If you are falling asleep now, keep this thought. Sometimes the house you think does not want you is simply waiting for you to come home to yourself, quietly, patiently, with the light left on.